The Kansas State Wildcats have the opportunity to win the Big 12, and with this big-time skill talent they have coming back, there's really no reason to think that they won't.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Portal Podcast. In this crossover with Locked On Kansas State, we're going to be talking all things Big 12 and the Wildcats. And thank you very much for making this or Locked On Kansas State your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Brian Smith, longtime recruiting analyst. Thank you for checking out all the stuff we've got going on in the portal. It's pretty wide variety right now with recruiting, NIL, transfer portal, and all these different preseason lists and polls. It's a lot of fun. And to help me break down everything going on with K-State in the upcoming Farmageddon game, Christian Rao. How are you doing, brother, besides being sick as all get out?
Yeah, dealing with a little bit of sickness, but that's not stopping us to talk about the Wildcats, and the season's right around the corner. So I guess I'm glad that I'm sick now and not when week 0 hits in a couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah, that would be a very difficult situation. Let's start off with some basics here. I had the opportunity to see Avery Johnson a few years ago at Elite 11, and it's different seeing a kid, and no offense to say to Kansas, but like there weren't many guys that could run with him, play with him in Kansas. His high school tape was good, but when I saw him from 5 feet away and throwing, I'm like, okay, this guy's got an unbelievable amount of talent. He's a guy that probably could have played multiple positions in college. I don't doubt that for a second, receiver, safety, whatever. But as a quarterback, I knew he had a lot of upside. Last season, Avery throws for 2,712 yards. He had ups and downs. They probably didn't achieve what they wanted, but first-year starters, that's not shocking. But a lot of people acted like he wasn't like really good. Like he's still better than 80% of the quarterbacks in college football as a first-year starter, in my opinion. So that's first. And secondarily, it is my strong belief that until you get to about 400, maybe 500 passing attempts in college, you're probably going to make a lot of mental errors, which he did. He's par for the course, and he still got to that. So I think he's going to take a jump this year. And before we get into Farmageddon, I just want this to be the overall theme, because I think K-State goes as far as Avery allows, not just throwing the ball, but his decision-making in particular, his ability to run. He's a freak athlete. Do you think he goes over 3,000 passing yards? And if he does, why?
Yeah, I do, actually. And I'm all on board with what you said. I think Avery takes a huge jump forward in 2025. He's added size. He's added speed. It's year 2 in the system. There's no longer a question whether who's going to be the offensive coordinator, who's going to call plays. Matt Wells is the dude now, and they have a great relationship. He's done fantastic jobs in the past with offensive coordinators, with quarterbacks. Like Jordan Love when he was the head coach at Utah State. I think not only do I think Avery Johnson will get 3,000 yards passing, he'll hit that 1,000 yards rushing. He'll be a 4,000 yard total yard quarterback in 2025.
I'm curious to see, like, it wouldn't shock me if Avery was actually below last year's passing total, but that's because he's sitting on the bench because they're beating teams worse. That's the other side of this. Yardage totals are always goofy. And, FanDuel and everybody else, and thank you to them for being a sponsor of this show. It's hard to pick, but I think if things play out normally and he's not like pulled a lot, I think he's going to hit 3,000 as well. The bigger question mark, though, this is one K-State fans are probably more interested in a lot of ways. Last season, he had 10 picks. That's, to be really honest, pretty normal for a first-year starting quarterback. Does he go under that total, and does he get under 8? Doesn't sound like a huge deal, but like 2 interceptions in a season can be the difference between 2 more wins or 2 more losses. Over under 8 interceptions for Avery Johnson this season.
Yeah, I'm going under. If you think about some of those interceptions that he had last year, there were obviously mental errors on some, being a first-year quarterback as the others, but some were play calling. And I will go ahead and say that. I'm not afraid to point the blame on some of them saying that was a bad play call. I don't think you're going to get that this year. So I'm going with under on this one. Not only are you adding Avery Johnson as a year 2 quarterback, you're adding size into the wide receiver room. Jared Bradley, Jaron Tips coming into the transfer portal, 6'3", 6'4" guys. That's going to help that target share, that spacing, if you will, for Avery Johnson. So some of those missed throws and some of those inaccurate throws that we saw in his first year as a starting quarterback, I think will automatically be changed, not only with that progression we see, but also with that size having on the outside. So I'm going to go under there, and I wouldn't even be afraid to say even under farther than 8. I'd go 6 or 7. No, let's just say 6. I think he finishes with 6. That's a fair number.
If he finishes with 6 and just to be clear, and he plays all 12, he's not banged up, he's a runner, he's probably going to get hit quite a bit. If he plays healthy through 12 with only 6, it's hard to see them not winning 10 games in the regular season, in my opinion. Now, to that point, this is the overarching theme again. Johnson, to me, is the key, and I'm not exactly jumping out on a limb here. Who's the second most important player on the offense besides Johnson? Is it the center to get the line calls right, to help him? Is it – I mean, you can always say it's Edwards. I get that. But who is the second most important player on the offense to make sure they get rolling?
Yeah, I mean, Sam Heck is very underrated, the center for Kansas State. I think we're going to see him in the NFL one day. You could probably make him as the most important guy on the offensive line for sure. But I would say you have to say Dylan Edwards, because how much workload DJ Giddens had last year, you have to make obviously you have to support Avery Johnson one way or the other. Opening up that play action is going to be very important to do so. Those off-tackle runs, those speeds, I think Dylan Edwards is that guy to make sure that he can give all the ability to Avery Johnson he possibly can. So I think Dylan Edwards is probably the most important or second most important player on that offense. I know it sounds like a kind of a cop-out, but yeah, I would say he's number 2.
Well, with him, I'm sure they're going to run some option and they're going to do some different things with RPO. He's such a threat. I saw him at Under Armour Future 50 a few years ago before his senior year of high school. And I'm like, holy crap. Like he was fastest guy there. He ran like a 4.37 or something like that. And I mean, he could really run. Like, that's just not normal for high school kids. There are a few guys like every year that are like that, but he was like one of the 5 fastest kids in the country. If you put him on the edge and you got Avery, most teams are going to want to like go after Avery, but you got to hedge towards doing it. Like if he turns the corner, it's 6. You can strike up the band before he gets past 50. You're not.
Oh, absolutely. And we saw it in the Rate Bowl as well. Kind of a taste of it when you were starting to see Matt Wells take over the play calling from Dylan Edwards and for the offense. And Dylan Edwards was electric. He broke school records in the bowl game. And it was just a taste of what we were going to expect in 2025. So I think we're going to see him more as just a traditional running back. I think we're going to see him in other areas as well, maybe as a slot receiver, which is exciting. But I think Dylan Edwards is going to wind up being a potential X factor for the Wildcats this season.
When we come back, we're going to try to figure out what is speaking of X factors, the biggest reason K-State could make a Big 12 title run and get into the playoff. Next here on this crossover Locked on K-State and the Portal Podcast. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. If you're using FanDuel for anything right now, I would imagine that baseball is on your mind with the playoffs coming up, Triple Crown possibilities, home runs, and all that stuff. And you got the over-unders of college football. There's a lot of different things to look at. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Thank you once again for making the Portal Podcast and Locked on K-State your first listens each and every day. Please hit that like, please subscribe, please share, and comment on our podcast. It really helps the algorithm. Okay, now let's kind of get down into the nitty-gritty. We've talked quite a bit about the offense. People love talking about Avery Johnson. There's so much potential, and he's one of the more fascinating players in college football. Same with Dylan Edwards. What has to happen for K-State to make a title run besides the obvious? Obviously, your quarterback plays got to get better. Those are low-hanging fruit. What are some of the nuances that you think need to transpire for them to be in the Big 12 title game and eventually get to the playoff?
Yeah, I mean, defense is obviously the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Chris Kleiman, what he said at the media days, Big 12 media days earlier in July. The biggest thing that stuck out to me was a quote that he said, "The defense is not where it needs to be. It is behind. I'm paraphrasing, but it's miles behind the offense heading into fall camp. And that's not something that you want to get warm and fuzzies about. Like, that's not something you're going to be excited about when you know you got to play August 23rd, the first game of the college football season, against a Big 12 rival, one of your biggest rivals, if not your biggest rival, in Iowa State and Farmageddon across the pond. So I think definitely defense right off the bat is the first thing. You're bringing back some of the best defenders, not only in the Big 12, but in college football, and guys like Austin Romaine at the linebacker position. But you're also trying to find ways to replace your secondary. You let Jacob Parrish and Marcus Siegel, they left to go to the NFL draft. You brought on some great transfer portal additions, but other than having a couple of young guns who showed some promise in the Rate Bowl game, don't really have too much experience. So the defense will be a biggest question mark for me. You mentioned, though, Iowa State, their offense on the other side there is a big question mark as well. So when Iowa State has the football, I think that's when it's going to be the most interesting type in this football game in week 0. Who's going to have the upper hand? Because I think Kansas State can get the better half of Iowa State's defense. I don't think that's going to be a problem. But can Iowa State continue to capitalize and answer back one by one because this defense is not ready to go? That'll be the biggest question.
Yeah, Rocco Becht is a kid I know. I lived in Tampa. I got to know him, his dad, and his mom, his sister, and everybody. And like that's a big football family. They had big aspirations. They knew they wanted to go to Iowa State because of the way he recruited them. He's taken over. I mean, they had a great year last year. But as we were talking off air, they didn't lose an NFL receiver. They lost 2.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I don't care if you're Texas, that's hard. At Iowa State, you're not going to replace that. I'm just being blunt. You're not. They hit a home run on a couple of bigger guys, too, that could really run. That is so unusual at a school like Iowa State. They don't normally have one guy that's going to the league. They had 2 guys drafted, I believe, in the first 90 or so picks.
Yep.
I mean, that's pretty impressive. They've got a great tight end room. I think that's where they're going to try to attack K-State. I would. If you've got multiple guys you think can at least get to the NFL Combine and, their coaching staff talks them up, which, you talk your own players up. Do you think that the linebacker room and the safeties for K-State are capable of playing? I know sometimes in zone, you're still basically in man, but can they be in one-on-one situations with Iowa State's tight ends and survive it? And on top of it, Rocco's a little better runner than people give him credit for, too. He'll take off and go get you 7 yards and annoy the crap out of you. How well do you think they'll tackle this year with this unit?
Yeah, I think it all depends, really stems on Iowa State's running game. If Kansas State immediately stops that means they can put more in the box. They can prepare more for passing plays, whatever the case may be, and help them make sure that they don't lose the game of separation. Because that was an issue at some points in times last year for the Kansas State linebacking crew, is that they were losing some of the speed separation games to some of the tight ends. And that could become a problem in Dublin if it's not corrected right away. But you mentioned Iowa State lost their 2 top wide receivers, both going to the Houston Texans, in Higgins and Knoll. If you put all that math together, I know you're a numbers guy. 167 receptions is what they have to replace just from those 2 wide receivers alone. That is so much. And that is not going to be something that you are going to have to moneyball that. You are going to have to do it in the aggregate. And I don't know if there's enough players to make that happen. So there's going to be a huge issue for Iowa State early. This is when you'd hope you have a season you're playing an FCS opponent at first if you're Iowa State, because you're losing that players, but you don't get that. You get Kansas State right off the bat.
Yeah, so that kind of turns it to this. A kid they had transfer in is Xavier Townsend. He played at UCF, but he was originally committed to Iowa State. Him and Rocco are buddies, goes to UCF, then he transfers out. He's going to be that guy that I think could be a pain. He's very shifty. But they also have a guy named Daniel Jackson, was a bigger receiver. He'll probably be their main guy, I would assume. I don't know. He's 6'2", 210, but like you said, 167 catches for 2 guys. That's insane to lose that from any school. Like, the Bama or LSU teams at 219. Okay, but you don't expect Iowa State to be in those kind of realms with a couple of top guys. Carson Hansen averaged 5 yards a carry last year, had 13 touchdowns for him as a running back. They've got Sam Abu Ali. I'm not sure how you say his last name. A couple of good running backs returning. Both those guys have had some success against K-State. Over under, Iowa State runs for 140 yards against K-State in Farmageddon.
Ooh, there's a lot of things that could come into play there. 140, that's an interesting number. Well, what kind of Dublin weather are we going to get for one? If it's a rainy day, they're going to be focused on the run. Based on past Farmageddons, it's almost safe to say the over. I mean, Abu Sama has been someone who has really been a thorn in our side over the past couple of Farmageddons for sure. There was one, I believe, 2 years ago where he ran over 200 yards rushing, just him alone. So
wow.
that was a snow game, an insane snow game. So I would probably say over, but I don't think I don't think that means bad things. If they're rushing for over 140 yards, I think that means that you're shut down something else. And that could be the fact of Rocco not being able to get it out to somebody. Maybe the weather's not that good. I'm not sure. So I'm going to say over, but just slightly, because in the second half, they're going to have to, no matter what, go to the pass because they're going to be down in this game.
Do you think that Iowa State's defense, I'm sure you've studied it more than I have, do you think they have the ability to hang with the inside run game and the option game? It's going to be kind of diverse this year for K-State. Again, Avery's going to be more comfortable. Dylan's more comfortable. Do you think they're going to be able to really kind of slow down K-State early on and like first down runs? Because if they don't, I think it's going to be a long day for Iowa State because Avery can throw the deep ball. He's got a big arm, obviously. What's your take on the run game defense for Iowa State?
I think that might be the biggest question. Like if you're putting like the keys to the game on the opening drive on the TV screen, that might be that. Like, can they stop Kansas State early? Can they limit the outside runs? And if they can, then we got a football game. But if not, this one's going to get ugly quick. I really do. This is the most weapons that Avery Johnson has had. This is so many weapons that he's had. It's insane. I think that you can even make the argument that there are way more weapons on this roster than they did on the 2022 Big 12 championship team. So you're bringing back Dylan Edwards. Joe Jackson is a great 1-2 combo, him in the backfield. They also brought in a transfer, Antonio Martin. I'll see if he can wind up being a third guy in that rotation. He's a big dude. He could be one of those short yardage situation dudes. And then you got a tight end room who arguably is the best tight end room in the country. You bring back all four tight ends that helped lead this team in red zone touchdowns in the country last year at 13. Then you bring in Lincoln Cure, who is the top prospect in program history, to add to that room as well. And then, as I mentioned earlier in this segment about the wide receivers with the size, and we didn't even talk about Jace Brown returning. And Jace Brown is
that's the guy I was going to ask about next.
Yeah, something that Iowa State does not have, a returning wide receiver one. Jace Brown, someone who didn't get 1,000 yards last year, will definitely be hungry to do so in 2025.
Yeah, he had 47 for 823, 17.5 per reception and 5 scores. Again, Avery Johnson had his issues at times last year, but throwing deep was not a big problem. And Jace has also got enough speed and wiggle. He's a panhandle kid from Florida. He plays at Choctaw High School, and you know, he's a heavily recruited kid. I'm not surprised that he's had a really good college career. I think he's got a chance to play in the NFL. Not the biggest guy necessarily. He's 180, 190 pounds, but he can scoot. That could be the X factor because I really think they're going to have to commit a safety to the box a lot of the time because if you get too much space between yourself and Edwards, there aren't a lot of guys, if he's face up with you, that are going to get a good shot on him. I've seen him from up close, man. Like even in high school, he is so twitchy. That's going to be, they're going to have to feast or famine it. If Avery Johnson's on, you're just going to lose. That's how I would look at it. If you beat me, you got to throw it. That's how I would do it. I'm not going to allow Edwards to go for 180 or something like that. You know what I mean? I would put the extra guy up and I would live with it, but we'll see. When we come back, I want to talk about the over-under for K-State's season, key games, and what they could do if they did make the college football playoff. All right, Christian, this is a rather fun way to kind of end the show.
Okay.
I want to get to the point talking about over-under on win totals. I could look up FanDuel's, but it's not that important to me. I want your over-under number where you think they should be right at. And I also want to know what they would have to do to go over. What is your win total number? Is it like 9.5? Is it 10.5? Where do you got?
Well, our friends at FanDuel do have them at 8.5, just to put that out there. But my prediction's 10-2. I think that you have to have at least a 9-win season because you've gone 8-4, not counting the bowl games too many times over the last couple seasons. And especially last year after starting 7-1 and then finishing 8-4 after the wheels falling off in Houston, you got to step up. This schedule isn't the easiest schedule. There are some advantages. I think they can take advantage of it, especially if they win in Dublin. But I think 10-2 is doable. I think they can take care of Iowa State. They have a reasonable non-conference schedule, although one of them is a Big 12 opponent in Arizona. The ones that scare me are is that there's a road game in Baylor, in Waco. For some reason, I don't like that one. We're going to truly see what Baylor is in their non-conference schedule. We're going to really know what that Baylor team is when we get to them in the middle of the season. And then towards the end of the year, Brian, we have to go to Stillwater and to Utah back-to-back. And you can't tell me in this Big 12 conference where parity from top to bottom, it's the craziest conference in college football when you talk about parity. You can't tell me that both Oklahoma State and Utah are going to be bad again. So knowing that you have to face them at the end of the season, both on the road, are pretty tough. So I feel like you lose 2 of those 3. I know we play Texas Tech in there as well, but I feel pretty confident about that one. 10-2, and you're back in Arlington for the first time since 2022.
So basically the Iowa State game, ironically, because it's game number 1 is the key. If you get behind the 8 ball, it becomes very difficult. I don't know which podcasts you watch or what people you follow. I watch the Cover 3 podcast some, and I know Bud Elliott. I talk to him quite a bit. I see him on the recruiting trail. And like every time they talk about the Big 12, it's the same thing that you probably talk about on Locked On K-State. That league, for whatever reason this year, just the way it formed, has the most returning quality quarterbacks you can just about imagine. It's insane. If your defense is off one day, brother, it's going to be a light show. Mm-hmm. So that's part of it. But the reason that I like K-State more than any other team in the league is you have a future NFL quarterback, in my opinion. I don't know if he'll be ready after this year, but he's trending in the right direction. Just hear me out.
Agreed.
They have a receiver that will at least have a cup of coffee in the NFL as well. Jason, somebody's going to bring him to their camp. He's going to have a chance. And you also got Edwards, and no offense to the Big 12, but there aren't many D lines in the Big 12 that scare me. Best one's probably Texas Tech that they just bought, but there are no SEC level defensive lines. He's going to have a huge year. And if he averages over 7 yards a carry, it will not shock Mr. Brian Smith. I can assure you that. So I think they're very well balanced on offense. And I just think that their coaching staff does a good enough job defensively. And I'm glad you brought up, hey, they're struggling a little bit going into fall camp on defense, but I have a hard time believing they're going to fall off the map. But they can finally score with teams if their defense is not where it needs to be. In this week, you better, especially the Baylor game, that could be as good a game this year as there is in college. That could be 45-42 with 3 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. That absolutely could. The running back at Baylor, NFL player. The wide receiver at Baylor, ironically, a former walk-on NFL player. And the quarterback, he went nuts the last 6 games of last season. So he's kind of trending just like Avery. That ought to be one of the most fun games, if not the best, in the league this year. I think that's the kind of the microcosm of the league. So you've got to be able to run it, got to play some defense, got to have coaching. I will take Kansas State's coaching staff over anybody else's if they've got a quarterback. That's just my belief, because they've been, like you said, they've been 8-4, but they're good every year. Name another team in the Big 12 that's been good for 4 years in a row, and you really trust the staff too. I know Utah would be the other one, but their quarterback situation's been so jacked up. I don't know what to think about them. They bring in the Dampier kid from New Mexico. But who would you say is the most likely team to compete with K-State and meet them in the Big 12? I've struggled with this. I've changed my mind about 10 times. What do you got?
Yeah, I've changed my mind too. I was initially at Kansas State, BYU, then the whole Retzlaff stuff going on with BYU made me change my mind there. I will say BYU is still going to be a really good team. I don't think their quarterback situation is as bad as if that would have happened to Kansas State. I think they still have a really good team. And I think that exactly. And I think they will be in competition to it. Look, I wouldn't be shocked if we were in the last week of the season, and there's a 7-way tie, or with 7 different teams with tiebreaker situations on who make it to Arlington. We had this 2 years ago. It could happen again. And I would not be surprised if that's the year. My initial prediction right now, not initial, but my updated prediction, as we sit right now, a couple weeks out of Arlington, or a couple weeks out of Dublin, excuse me, is Kansas State, Arizona State. But you got to be careful here, because if you don't count Oklahoma and Texas, who have left for the SEC, the only Big 12 team that has gone back-to-back to Arlington is Colorado in 2004 and 2005. It has been 20 years since a team has gone back-to-back to the Big 12 championship. Not won it, just go. So we'll see if the Arizona State can do that. It's not really a good odds for my prediction. But that's where I'm going right now, mainly because Kansas State doesn't have to play Arizona State in the regular season. So I think they both find a way to go at least 7-2, maybe potentially one of them 8-1 in conference, and that'll be good enough for Arlington.
Well, that's an interesting way to look at it. I mean, it does matter who's on your schedule. Baylor's a tough opportunity. Texas Tech is a tough opportunity, and they have a few others. But you could make a strong argument, besides Iowa State, they obviously play them in first game in Farmageddon, that Arizona State is going to be really good again. They got the transfer running back. They got another running back that was pretty good behind Scattaboo. And Levitt's a future NFL player. I don't think anybody's going to doubt that. And they got the receiver, Jordan Tyson, back. That guy's an animal. I mean, so that would be one heck of a Big 12 title game, and sign me up for that. I would be all for it. That'd be a lot of fun to watch. And I'd be curious about it because I'm a big believer in stats and trends. Arizona State was the only team last year to make the playoff that was primarily a transfer team. How in the world they worked that? And I get the whole Scattaboo move. Like that was a phenomenon that can't be defined in numbers. Mm-hmm. But like they have every player on their offense, I believe, is a transfer that's starting. That is not normally a good sign. Like the teams that made the Final Four combined, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, and Ohio State had 35 transfers. Arizona State had something similar to that by themselves. So they were the anomaly. I still think Kansas State's approach, they get more homegrown kids, redshirt. I still think that's the reason for their consistency. And it's why I have the same two teams, by the way, in my final two teams in the Big 12. I have Kansas State beating ASU in the Big 12 title. And I think a big part of it is the continuity. Avery Johnson being back, Dylan Edwards being back, you got Jace, like key skill guys. And name a time where you said to yourself, Kansas State's offensive line this year was terrible. Like they don't get the blue chip guys that Notre Dame and Texas do, but they redshirt, they're consistent. They'll have a walk on every third or fourth year. I don't know how the hell they do it, but it's at least competitive. So I think there'll be a real bear there. And defensively, they may not be great. But again, I really feel comfortable with their coaching staff and what they've done over the last several years. They'll be competitive. I'm not saying they're the 85 Bears, but they're going to be competitive. So, Christian, any last thoughts about overall for K-State? I've got them at 10-2 as well. It's pretty ironic that we have pretty much the same data. I think they will win a close game. I think the Farmageddon game will be bananas. It's going to be one of the better games, I think, just from a competitive standpoint in college football this year. It's ironic that it's week 0, but I'll take it. Any last thoughts on this season for the Wildcats?
Well, week 0, Farmageddon is going to be the first time an international game to open the season. First time in Dublin history that 2 ranked teams are going to be starting the season. That's awesome. You're going up the coaches poll, pretty cool there. And hey, we mentioned Arlington there with Arizona State, Kansas State. I think the mission is just getting to Arlington because I'm going to go out on record and say that I think 2 teams from the Big 12 make the college football playoffs this season. So there's my final thought.
I think, especially if K-State wins that game in a close one, Arizona State gets, not that it's fair, but they made the playoff last year and they looked pretty good, to be honest, against Texas. I still think they got kind of screwed. They're probably going to get the benefit of the doubt if it's real close because they did it last year and looked good. I think that that is something to think about. Christian, tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
Locked On K-State on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, you name it. And then, of course, YouTube audio, Locked On Kansas State, bringing you daily Kansas State Wildcats coverage every single day.
Appreciate it, sir. You can find the Portal Podcast wherever you get your pods, Podbean, Apple, Spotify, and everywhere else. And of course, on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We will see you all soon.